After the president's clear reversal, it's not clear how, when, or if families that are currently separated will in fact be reunited. That means hundreds of children may remain in holding facilities for some time. Let's go to CNN's Polo Sandoval. He's at one of the detention centers in Texas for us. Polo, what can you tell us about conditions where you are?
We know, Wolf, it's tough to say since some of the officials here have not allowed our cameras inside the facility similar to this one, but I will tell you, they're in places that you wouldn't expect, including this South Texas neighborhood, a working class neighborhood. Some of the neighbors tell me they often even kick soccer balls back over the wall here and often hear the sounds of children playing. Not today, though. Meanwhile, a big question here. What will happen to the roughly 2,300 kids already separated from their parents? This is a detention facility for the youngest immigrant children being held against their will in a U.S. city. It's a nondescript former private home in the tiny Texas town of Combs, 20 miles from the U.S.-Mexico border. From outside, these black strollers and a small outdoor playground are the only signs of some 60 children ranging in age from infants to 10 years old housed inside. Some may have been forcibly separated from their parents after crossing into the country illegally. The U.S. government calls it a tender age facility, one of at least 3 in Texas alone. Today, the CEO of Southwest Key, the company that operates the center and others, offered his own description.
I want to make it very, very clear that this is not a detention center. We have a license by the state of Texas to run a child care facility. And what we run is a child care facility.
CNN and other media outlets have not been allowed to bring cameras inside any of the facilities currently housing minors separated from their families. The government has only given this handout video and some photos showing families behind chain-link cages, resting on green sleeping pads and wrapped in Mylar blankets. None of the government handout materials show girls.
We've only seen the boys.
I will look into that. I'm not aware that there's another picture.
CNN spoke to Democratic Texas Congressman Filemon Vela, who got a rare glimpse inside one of these centers.
The idea that you could walk into a facility like this one and see children at the age of 8 months or 1 year who have been taken from their parents, and the idea that it's the American government in the year 2018 holding them hostage for whatever ambitions the president may have, it's just abhorrent.
Now, as President Trump signs an executive order to keep detained families together, the question is, what's next for those who have already been torn apart? Texas attorney Thelma Garcia represents parents separated from their children.
All they do is cry because no one has contact with their children.
Heartbroken parents charged under the president's zero-tolerance policy are making up more of Garcia's caseload these days.
Before, they would be placed in family facilities where you would have the mothers or the fathers with the children. Now, as far as I know, those facilities don't exist. So where are you going to reunite them? It's going to be anywhere from a month to 2 months minimum for them to go through the process.
Before they're able to hold their child again?
Yes. Yeah.
We could see the creation, or at least a setup of more of these family holding units, similar to what we witnessed down here about 4 years ago when this mass group of undocumented and unaccompanied minors were coming into the country. Wolf, as for the roughly 2,300 kids who have already been separated from their parents, today's executive order from President Trump is not addressing family reunification. So the big question, when will they be by their parents' side again?
Yeah, that's an enormous question. What happens to those 2,300 kids who are already separated, not impacted directly from this executive order the president signed today? Polo Sandoval, thank you very much. Joining us now, Congressman Ted Lieu. He's a California Democrat. He serves on the Judiciary and Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. Let me get your quick reaction. The president announcing that the families will now at least be kept together, but they will be held together in detention while the parents face criminal prosecution. What's your reaction to this solution, this executive order signed by the president today?
Thank you, Wolf, for your question. Today's action shows that Donald Trump and Secretary Nielsen lied to the American people repeatedly. They first said there was no family separation policy. Then they tried to blame it on the Democrats. Then they said only Congress can do it. And with today's executive order that reverses this policy, we know that it was all lies. That's why Secretary Nielsen needs to resign. Her credibility has been shredded. I and many other members of Congress no longer have faith in her. And this executive order itself has a number of problems that might not actually solve the ultimate issue.
Well, let's go through some of those issues. There's a court order, as you know, that prevents the government from holding children in detention for longer than 20 days. The executive order signed by the president today says he's going to go to court. The Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, shall promptly file a request with the U.S. District Court for the Central District of California, you're from California, to try to modify that. What's your reaction?
There are a number of ways to solve the family separation issue. Donald Trump picked one of the worst ways, which is to try to reverse an actual court settlement. In this case, what they could do is, after 20 days, let the family go and have them come back for the court hearing. Many times, you have these asylum proceedings, and under the Bush and Obama administrations, they would let the asylum cases go forward before prosecuting them. That makes the most sense. That's what the Trump administration actually should do, instead of prosecuting every single person. That's not rational when many of them have legitimate asylum claims.
They say they're not going to do that because a lot of these families, they say, would simply disappear and not show up for some court proceedings and just wind up illegally in the United States. Could this decision, this executive order signed by the president today, lead to families being detained indefinitely?
It could. That's why I think the judge is not going to modify that settlement, or if she does, it's not going to be modified for a very long. Again, the easiest way to reverse this policy is to reverse Attorney General Jeff Sessions' policy letter that caused this crisis in the first place. And this is not the proper way to go about it, to detain whole family units indefinitely.
But as you said, this executive order signed by the president isn't getting rid of the zero tolerance policy that aims to criminally prosecute 100% of the people crossing the border illegally. Do you think the goal is to prosecute every single person who crosses the border? Is that really practical? Is it necessary for national security?
It is not practical at all. I previously served on active duty. The U.S. faces a lot of serious threats, but we don't have threats from babies and children, and many of these migrants are coming over or fleeing persecution with legitimate asylum claims. They are not Al-Qaeda, they are not terrorists, and we need to follow our own laws, which is to let their asylum claim proceeding go forward. And the Trump administration, in trying to prosecute them for these misdemeanors, has caused this entire crisis in the first place. They could reverse that if they want to.
But you hear the president often say many of them are drug dealers or they're gang members or they're killers simply seeking to illegally enter the United States.
And we certainly ought to prosecute those individuals. That's why you should have prosecutorial discretion. To say you're going to prosecute 100% of the people coming over, even if they're kids or migrants who have no criminal record, makes no sense. And again, this entire crisis is something that the Trump administration caused. They could diffuse it, and unfortunately, this executive order does not fully diffuse the problem.
What do you need to do? Does Congress need to act to make sure those 2,300 children who have been already separated over the past several weeks from their parents will in fact be reunited, because this executive order doesn't say anything about them?
Another reason Homeland Secretary Nielsen needs to resign is that 19 days ago, I led a letter with other members of Congress asking her very basic questions about this family separation policy, such as, how do you know you're not putting a child with a child molester? How do you make sure we reunite children with their parents? To this day, she still can't answer those very basic questions. I have introduced legislation along with Ranking Member Nadler and many others to solve this problem, to reverse this policy, and to really put into law a fix to what the Trump administration has done with their policy.
Congressman Ted Lieu, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf.